And just last November, we had to have 8 stitches put in her head 8 different times. And each time at least 12.
Thank you for being here. Dixie, thank you for being here too.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this point in time, I'd ask Mike LaJoyce, if I got that name correct, please come forward. Thank you for being here. Just introduce yourself.
Good morning, sir. I'm a retired law enforcement officer from the state of Connecticut. Retired because I now live in Murrells Inlet, South Carolina. I met Janelle and David, who have a sick daughter named Harmony. I've worked with a lot of judiciary committees in Connecticut while serving my term up there, 29 and a half years. And from the law enforcement perspective, before any kind of bill like this came about, it wasn't uncommon, that it was always against, because you think it's going to lead to a recreational use situation. And we'd go to a lot of hearings and subcommittee hearings and testify on behalf of the law enforcement image of where this could go and the negative results of it. So first I want to state that I am not for recreational use. However, coming from a state that's had successful bills and now has cultivation centers in its state, and seeing the positive results for CBD oil and other cannabis treatments for medical purposes only, I had decided that when I had consulted with David and Janelle and Jill, that I would come here today and at least tell you from that perspective that although your bill is definitely conservative, I come from a state that actually passed a very liberal bill that involved the use of medical marijuana, and it did not include CBD oil. So I went back up there 2 months ago just to meet with the people that I worked with for my judiciary committee for so many years and shake my head in disarray that I can't believe that they didn't have that CBD part approved, yet they had the cultivation of the medical marijuana part. And now, in fact, they do have both. The bill that you have before you that you've created is, in my opinion, much more conservative. And I'm sure there's some fine parts of it that need to be tuned and really brought with more respect to how things should be managed. I assure you that responsibility to those entrusted to do this, for instance, I believe one of the first plants, the CBD oil side of this, will be up near Conway, up in Horry County. I've actually been to the property myself. I did that because I'm friends with the parents, and I know the very ill daughter who I've seen with tremendous results personally. I never personally had a family member affected by it, so it was easy to go to a Senate hearing or a judiciary hearing and say, no, I don't think it's a good idea because of the law enforcement tentacles with that. But when you really know somebody on the inside, whether it's an ill child or an ill adult, it really, it makes you a little bit closer to the situation. And after seeing where for instance, I went up to Conway and I saw where they want to start their cultivation center. It's a good place. It's not surrounded by a residential community. There's very, very few houses near there. And so we started to consult about security and things like that and ways of really going about this. Transparency is the most important thing. And I applaud you for taking, Senator Davis, for taking this as serious as you all have, because I don't think that in some states, and I have been in Washington myself as a member of National Institute of Justice, I don't think people really realize the magnitude of who this is supposed to be for. And I will state publicly that I think Colorado's got it all wrong. And I am a civilian now, I can say what I want with no political recourse, which I used to have. So I just want to, like I said, I want to come here today and tell you that if this is done properly, and I think if SLED works with the cultivation areas and the centers, and certainly I have, I will be there for that family to positively make this work, because you got a mother who wants to set up her own center and grow CBD oil. So as the other mother just said, they know exactly what they're getting. You can clearly find online how many times people from other states have sent product to other states, and it's not good. It's not tested properly. It's too high. I mean, this is a very low dose in most cases for most of these children. And as far as the medical marijuana part of it, again, if it's regulated properly and SLED takes that positive approach and spends time with these people, you know, they're professionals. I mean, this law enforcement down here have been excellent, and they know their business. The red flags are going to shoot up. They're going to know who's legit, who's trying to do the right thing. I mean, this is really a matter of transparency and opening up your door. And if any of these centers that decide to try to open up here in your state come from other states and they don't want to open their doors, my advice is don't let them in. And it's that simple. And if you keep control of this, as you are, and I can see your bill, you're clearly putting a lot of hard work into this, I think you're going to have positive results. And the sick people of South Carolina are going to know what the product they're getting is, who it's coming from, and if it's good or not. And I think the review process is done on an annually, you know, biannually basis, maybe twice a year. I think this whole process will work for you. So I just wanted to, again, come as now a resident of South Carolina and testify.
Thank you, Mike. Do we have any questions?
Sir, thank you for coming here today. And again, what was your law enforcement experience background again?
I started out as a patrolman and I finished as director. And I've worked in state, local, city, and federal. My last position was a director of security, and I actually oversaw the undercover statewide task force guys that we had working with the Joint Terrorism Task Force, Hartford Safe Streets, you know, gun task force, crime prevention task force, things like that. And, but I was one of the statewide directors for that.
I think you said initially that given that law enforcement background, you had a view or an opinion of this that later changed as a result of, take me through that process where coming from a law enforcement background and having that initial, you know, negative reaction, for lack of a better word, and then transitioning toward one with more empathy and understanding. Take us through that, because I think that's one of the challenges we're going to, here in South Carolina, we're breaking new ground and we're trying to introduce something new, and so I think it's important for your experiences to be shared.
Yes, sir. You know, the most important thing is that the mentality is usually that whoever has got the experience in this has probably grown illegally, probably served in penitentiaries or done some illegal things, and that's probably everybody's feeling from law enforcement. So the people that are going to get involved in this are dirty people, or they're the kind of people you don't, you know, want making a ton of money selling, you know, marijuana and having things go out the back door. And in all honesty, in some of the states and some of the areas across the country, they've had issues. I can say mostly in the Northeast, and I've worked with the other New England states, there hasn't been any issues because of the regulatory system that's been placed in. And what realistically, it's better to not have it at all than to introduce a little, because everybody thinks a little is going to lead to open recreational, everybody walking around high as a kite. And so it's better to just fight it, you know, at the base and not have it in your state. But the reality is most states are adopting some type of medical use throughout the country, and I know you guys, you know, the committee knows this. So at this point, from a law enforcement perspective, until it's successful, and I'll give you a prime example. When I went back up, this is a classic example, until it's successful, and it was successful, it has been successful for the medical marijuana usage in Connecticut. When I went back up for the CBD oil part, which is what you already have, I mean, again, I don't know why they put the cart before the horse. It should have been the other way around. I thought the way you did it was much better. You know, I met with all my constituents. I met with the people that and they really didn't even have any much interest in testifying against it because it was for the young children. It was the CBD oil. So again, sometimes it's the first, you know, cultivation, the first dispensary, the first usage, and then the report comes back. You know, law enforcement has to have a sense of security too, because ultimately they bear the political anguish of it when it goes wrong, and unfortunately, that's the part that nobody wants to deal with, because they'll say, well, your officers didn't do a good job, or you know, they weren't out there doing what they should, and I think we need to support them, and that's why I say we have to bridge a clear understanding between both sides so that they are comfortable, and if they're not comfortable, SLED should have that control to say this is not the person, this is they have a horrible criminal past or whatever, And I would support that, because I do not support.
And let's touch on that a little bit about the, one of the concerns that have been expressed to me, and I take it seriously in trying to address it, is the diversion. You know, somebody who says that they're gonna grow cannabis for medicinal purposes and then instead grows it and then it's for recreational use. Are the types of seed to sale chain of custody and the transparency and the oversight and those things that we've built into this, are those the kind of things that can alleviate those concerns? Or talk a little bit about anti-diversion, you know, in Connecticut or in this bill, and give us a degree of comfort, if you can, that what is grown is in fact going to be for medicinal use and not recreational. I mean, can we do that?
I think the key element to this is the testing process and the actual security of the dispensaries or of the cultivation centers. You know, how well are they managed? Are they going through, you know, rigorous unannounced audits? You know, are they disclosing full disclosure? And I heard part of the bill is full disclosure. I mean, this is what it's all about. It's about transparency and full disclosure. They do have to have an open door to allow SLED and especially here in South Carolina to come in and regulate that. If there's any possible suspicion of diversion at that point, I mean, the state still holds the right to manage the situation as they see fit, just like you know, even in private sector with companies that are, you know, making pharmaceutical products. You know, they go in and we watch them. We do what we have to do. There's regulatory people that do that, and I think at that point you got to come in and you know, in some cases maybe people will be put on suspension or you know, have their licenses revoked. But I think if agriculture obviously works with SLED and SLED's working with the cultivation area and they're aware of where they are and they, you know, they have to have that constant communication. In the case of the Conway one that I'm aware of, it's Palmetto Harmony. The mother is the mother of a very, very sick child who needs this. So I'm you know, I've seen this family. They're going to make sure they get a really good CBD oil for these children. And I think each center will be on a case-by-case basis. And if SLED is not comfortable with that, then that'll be the best time to bring that up to them.
Final question, Mr. Chairman, is in regard to the argument made by some that if the state, as a matter of public policy, says we're going to allow doctors in consultation with patients to authorize the use of cannabis-related medicines, that somehow is going to lead in society overall more recreational use by individuals. So more, in other words, the camel's nose in the tent, that even though you say, Senator Davis, that you intend this to be for medicinal purposes only, once you relax your guard, once you go ahead and say that this can be a medicine that's authorized, the inevitable consequence of that is going to be higher recreational use of marijuana. What is your opinion in regard to that particular concern?
You know, that's a security concern right off the bat, because I think if you have doctors out there doing that, their licenses should be revoked if they're just doing it for the sake of doing it. And I think, again, and each individual investigation, it would have to be done with, you know.
My question, not necessarily in terms of the product being diverted, in terms of changing cultural mores, and in terms of individuals feeling that it's more acceptable to recreationally smoke marijuana now because it's been authorized for medicinal purposes. Do you have any opinion in that regard? Because I've heard that argument made. I don't agree with it, but I've heard that argument made.
Well, I'll tell you this. The people that I know of that in the state of Connecticut where it was enforced, they took a sort of a liberal approach, however it's worked in some ways. They actually issued cards before they had a dispensary or a cultivation center. So where do you think the people were going to get their marijuana? They got it off the street. And that's the wrong message. I think here, based on what I'm reading and what I'm seeing and what I've been privy to, I think the conservative approach, the way it appears to be, would be much better for security concern. And I think that officers will know right off the bat if somebody's, you know, they have that, you know, it's kind of a lie detector. It's a built lie detector. When you ask somebody certain questions, the way they respond to you, they'll be able to pick up on it. And hopefully, I don't think it'll be a huge problem. I really don't, because I think that you've really put a lot of good language in your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all I have.
Mike, thank you for being here. You know, you're law enforcement in Connecticut. I live in Murrells Inlet, and Tom Keegan, I think, was law enforcement in Connecticut and then served up, I think, 16 years up in the House here. So, you know, there may be a second career for you yet. Just not right away, okay? At least not next June. Thank you for being here with us. I appreciate it. I'm going to excuse you, and we're going to get our next speaker up, Dan O'Neill, if Dan's. Thank you, please.